Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear Kardec Radio listener. This show is about Spiritist psychiatric hospitals. Why do we need to talk about it? We need to talk about it because mental illnesses are in great demand. From anxiety to depression to schizophrenia, ADHD in kids, and many other problems. Can you believe it? If you go to the website of the National Institute of Mental Health in the United States, in their website they show that more than 4% of the population are in serious mental ill problems. The one that really impairs them from functioning well. It disables them. But this is only about serious mental illnesses. If we talk about mental illnesses that actually can occur in a day-to-day basis and not impair you completely, we can go to much higher numbers, beyond 30%. And this is only in the United States. In children alone, the National Institute of Mental Health tells us that 13% of children between 8 and 15 display some form of mental disorder. Amongst them, the highest is ADHD, and then the second one is mood disorders, followed by major depression and other disorders as well, including eating disorders. Did you know eating disorders can be considered a mental illness? Yes, it is. We need to know a lot about it. Of course, in general, we can tell that the numbers are that mental illnesses in general, they burst, especially in the teen years. We can tell that 42% of mental illnesses, they happen between 13 and 14 years of age, and then 46% in between 15 and 16, and then 55% between 17 and 18-year-old people. Majority are teenagers. Why? Why does this happen? Why do mental illnesses happen to us? Is there something to learn from it? Actually, Allan Kardec, in the Spirit's book, published in 1857, he asked this question to the illuminated spirits, to the mediums of the time. If you go to Spirit's book, question 371, he says, is there any basis for the opinion that mentally impaired individuals have a soul of little evolved nature? Now, listener, listen to this. The answer is no. They have a human soul who is frequently more intelligent than you might think, and who suffers immensely from the insufficiency of its means to communicate, as a mute suffers from the inability to speak. So then his question is, what is the aim of providence to allow such thing to happen? Well, the spirits who dwell in such bodies are atoning past wrongs. They suffer from their constraints and from the impossibility of expressing themselves because of underdeveloped and defective brains. This book is fascinating, and there's more. We're going to tell you more about it. And this show, we are honored to have two very special guests. Dr. Emma Bragdon, who is a PhD in transpersonal psychology from the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. She has advanced training in process-oriented psychotherapy, neurorigation therapy, breath work, past life regression, and developing intuition. She has professional experience of a very broad perspective, from a private practice to volunteering in spiritual emergency network, 13 years teaching 9-day trainings to accelerate spiritual growth. She's also the director of Spiritual Alliances and the Foundation of Energy Therapy. She is also very engaged in the Spiritist community here, especially in Brazil. She has a beautiful story to share with us. And on the second part of the show, we're delighted to have also Dr. Ricardo Bianco, who is a clinical psychologist with primary expertise in areas of behavioral medicine, multicultural issues, and general mental health. He's a spiritist, and he has done his master's degree in counseling psychology from Boston College and his doctorate degree in clinical psychology from Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology. And he has a very strong experience as well in his PhD thesis and also in his practice in contacting, in researching on Spiritist Hospital in Brazil. There's a lot to know because today, if you go to Brazil, if you have any mental disability, very likely you will be before professionals there who, especially in psychiatric hospitals, who are mostly managed by spiritists and spiritist professionals. I mean professionals meaning physicians, nurses, psychologists in general, who are spiritists, in which they combine this approach. You want to know more about this approach? Maybe it's a good opportunity for us to think about, as Dr. Jeffrey Rediger told us a month ago in the show here at Cardiac Radio when he was talking about healing in John of God. He said we need to make efforts to shift the paradigm, and especially the healthcare in regard to mental illnesses. It is very sad and very frustrating at times, if not oftentimes, in regard to mental illnesses. And to begin this beautiful program with a very inspirational message, because this show is not about sad news. It's about the realization of the laws of life, combining with the laws of science that are being spread out through scientific evidence, bringing guests that can add to it, and bringing hope to all of our hearts so we can live in a better world. And to kickstart it, we're going to stream right now to you one of the tracks of this beautiful CD, Enlightening Messages, that the Spirit Side of Baltimore put together, messages received through Chico Xavier, several different spirits. This one is about Emmanuel telling us only today.
Only today. Throughout your whole life, you will never have another day like today. Remember this, and attend to all good that you can do. Be useful by helping someone. Pay heed to your duties. Happiness and peace, hope and care are what you wish to sow in your path. Joy and favor are gifts that you wish to offer. Relationships that you need to mend, courtesy at home, the most simple and the most demanding work. Review, readjustment, corrections, forgiveness, signs of care and esteem, spiritual support during the work that you embrace and bless. Not one of these things should you delay or leave for later, because time will not return. In a day like today, you only have once.
Beautiful message by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. You can find these and much more in the CD Enlightening Messages, published by the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. Chico Xavier's prayers, stories, messages. Many spirits through Chico Xavier brought beautiful messages such as this one only today. And this comes for you. Go to the Spiritist Society of Baltimore bookstore, www.ssbaltimore.org/bookstore, and you will be delighted about it, especially because in a few months it's going to be Christmas time, and this CD has also prayers for Christmas, stories about Christmas, beautiful things, beautiful gift also for your friends, family in general. So this show is about the Spiritist psychiatric hospitals. We're talking about mental illnesses. And Allan Kardec asked in question 373 of the Spirit's book, what could possibly be the merit in the existence of beings who, like the mentally impaired, can do neither good nor evil, and therefore cannot progress? It is an expiation, or better, an atonement, imposed for their having abused certain faculties in a former life. It is a temporary pause. You want to know more cases about it? We're going to show you today 2 cases about mental illness and the spiritual approach to relieve it. Spiritism can help. How? We're going to tell you very soon as we bring Dr. Emma Bragdon and Dr. Ricardo Bianco to tell us more. In the meantime, let us get to know that Kardec Radio is there. You don't need a computer, actually. You can listen to Kardec Radio through your phone. If you're mobile, you connect to blogtalkradio.com/Kardec Radio. You can download the application and listen directly into it. You can click on the sound players of each and every show that is on demand past the live shows in our website at KardecRadio.com. And also, you can download all the files of the previous shows directly from iTunes. Just write on Kardec Radio and you're there. Did you know that Kardec Radio is 77%, of our listeners are in North America? Yes, it is. Then 15% of our listeners are located in South America, 7% in Europe, and we also have listeners in Asia, Africa, and Australia. We have listeners in more than 42 countries, being 71% in the United States, and then 14% in Brazil, 5% in Canada, 4% in the United Kingdom and Ireland. And in the USA alone, Kardec Radio listeners are spread out throughout more than 43 states. And if you go to our Facebook page, Kardec Radio, you're going to find out which states are not there. Challenge for all of us. Emmanuel said one of the best ways to exercise charity is also to disseminate these ideas about Spiritism. So go there. Check it out at our Facebook page, Kardec Radio, and see which states we don't have Kardec Radio listeners at all. And if you know somebody there, email them, call them, and tell, come on, let's bring Kardec Radio there, because it's bringing good news about life, about ourselves, and especially about our relationship with God and His laws. Yes, we want to know more about how to live a better life. To live a better life is to know ourselves. But what if we're troubled? What if you have a family member that is becoming impaired by some form of mental disturbance, mood disorders, aggressiveness, etc.? What do? Can Spiritism help you? Well, we'll bring Dr. Emma Bragdon right after these messages.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio. Eternal Bonds of Love is a poignant account of a young man's afterlife experiences after his death at age 20. Ricardo passed after an accidental fall at college on September 18, 2005. He started communicating through written messages to his father on July 2006. In July 2007, he communicated to his parents that they would be writing a book together to be finished and published in 1 year's time. And so they did. You will find in this unusual book Ricardo's story about his experiences, feelings, emotions, and spiritual development in the first 2 years after his untimely and unexpected passing. Eternal Bonds of Love is comforting, hopeful, and inspiring, and teaches us that true love has no boundaries, no limits, that time and space are illusions, and that love binds us together eternally wherever we are. Purchase this book by visiting the SSB online bookstore at www.ssb.org www.ssbaltimore.org.
Join us every Thursday live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Enrich your spiritual senses and deepen your foundations of Spiritism with the book, What is Spiritism? By Allan Kardec. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're here talking about Spiritist psychiatric hospitals. Why? Because if you're living in the United States, for example, go to a psychiatric hospital and they're going to give you medication, which is great. We bless the traditional medicine, but it's very limiting. There's much more to be done, and Brazil is a role model in it. For the current times, we know the majority of the psychiatric hospitals there are administrated by Spiritist people and professionals in general. We want to know more about it. That's why we're honored to have here Dr. Emma Bragdon, who is the Director of Spiritual Alliances and the Foundation for Energy Therapies. She has a PhD in Transpersonal Psychology from the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And not only that, but she has been traveling to Brazil since 2001 to get to know more about spirituality in Brazil. And she has special expeditions to explore spirituality in Brazil, and one of the places is John of God. She is also a medium, a healer, and she is publishing this October an amazing textbook, an unforeseen book about spiritism and mental health, and she has brought in many very high profile, if I may say this way, professionals in the health sciences to talk about mental health and bridge it with spirituality, something that we need to read to understand more. And she's going to be in the Maryland, Virginia area visiting the Spirit Society of Baltimore and the Spiritist Society of Virginia on the weekend of October 1st and 2nd to talk specifically about the book. Thus, she is going to be webcast by the TVCA live on Saturday, October 6th, so don't miss it. And she's here with us live. Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Vanessa. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We are so honored to have you here because we know you have been working hard throughout these years, and now you focus on this beautiful proposal about the need to expand our understanding on the approaches to treat mental awareness. But our first question is, how did you get interested in this research of spiritism and mental health?
Well, I really didn't know anything about spiritism until the 1980s, and I was in graduate school at that time, and I read something about mediums in Brazil who went into the hospitals and helped with diagnosis and treatment. And it grabbed me. I just felt, wow, this is exciting. I want to know more, but I couldn't find any more information easily. And so I let it go past and attended to an extremely busy life I had at that point, raising a family as well as studying. So it wasn't until March of 2001 that I was invited to teach in Brazil, and I was teaching, as you mentioned before, a 9-day course in spiritual growth. And I then went to visit the Sanctuary of John of God. And it was at that sanctuary, actually in the first 24 hours I was there, that some mediums who I'd never met before came up to me spontaneously and said, "You're here to help with the spread of information about Spiritism." I didn't know what they meant. I still was very ignorant. And I actually thought they must be talking to somebody else or have mistaken me for someone. And then there were a series of, I can only say, synchronicities or meaningful coincidences where I met people who were deeply engaged with the Spiritist movement, not only around the Sanctuary of John of God, but also in Brazil, and in some cases were in very important leadership positions. Julika Kiskos is maybe someone you're familiar with. She's a psychologist who coordinated a very large conference in Sao Paulo, and that was over 20 years ago now, but it was in transpersonal psychology, and it was basically designed to bring transpersonal psychologists to meet together from all over the world. It was an international conference, but especially she wanted to expose them to Spiritism because she herself, as a psychologist, assisted with the work at a particular Spiritist center in Sao Paulo and was very deeply impressed with the ways that her patients were being helped there. Mm-hmm. So under Julika Kiskos' wing, I was introduced to the Federation in Sao Paulo and then to several different kinds of centers around Sao Paulo, especially being engaged with learning from a woman who ran a center that was beautifully run in Sao Paulo, but smaller than the Federation. Mm-hmm. And it was there that I really became engaged with, my gosh, this is absolutely fabulous what's going on here. And I said, I see so many good results with people feeling grounded, more happy, as if the deepest questions of their life they're not being answered from the outside, they're being remembered from the inside. People re-engage themselves on a very deep level. And so even though they hadn't come to the centers with a mental illness, they were, I think, maintaining a kind of mental health that many of us in the United States don't even know about. Mm-hmm. Because there's so few places we can go to gather to discuss the most important questions in life. Why are we here? What happens after death? What is the spiritual realm about? So answering those questions is a component of mental health. Well, to go back to your question.
Yeah.
Yes. So
it's so beautiful, Emma, because I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you're sharing this meaningful experience about meeting these friends there and then realizing how much Spiritism in some way and form can add to the healing approach of mental illnesses in general and bring such transformative experiences. But how did you go from, because many people have already been to Brazil or they are in Brazil and they've come across this in several Spiritist centers, but going from that moment into researching like you did and engaging and being so committed to bringing this message, to the largest audience in the world. How did you go from point A to B? I know your father was a scientist.
Yes.
Right?
Well, yes, Vanessa, he was a very deeply committed scientist. He was a pathologist who worked at the Institute of Health, National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, and he was involved, interestingly enough, in heart disease and very deeply oriented towards the physical components of heart disease. In other words, how our diet, if we eat a high-fat diet, for instance, it can lead to clogging our arteries. That seems very rational to us now, but in the 50s when he was doing his work, that people hadn't quite gotten to understand that yet. So, but my father was deeply dedicated, and so I was very appreciative of him as a scientist. He was also a writer and an editor of medical journals. So, and my mother a nurse. So I have this in my blood, I guess, to be in service around medical kinds of issues and research and writing. So, from a Spiritist point of view, of course, I chose my family, and I feel like I chose my family well to assist me on my way.
Yeah.
But even being in Sao Paulo on that first trip, which was in 2001, some of the mediums that I met mentioned to me that I had this is a joke. I had so many spirits who were supporting my work that I should travel around Sao Paulo with at least 5 taxis, so they all had a place to sit.
That's good. I shall ride with you in one of the 5.
So I must say, I've had a lot of inspiration on a deep inner level to continue on with this work, and I do feel that it's just part of what my mission is in this lifetime, and what my education was all set me up for. But I must say that the people that I met were so deeply inspiring to me and so deeply dedicated, and that also assisted me to be in syntony with them and move along in a direction where I could be of assistance. And I asked Dona Marta, who is the spiritual head of the first Spiritist center I visited in Sao Paulo, I said to her, if this is so very, very effective for people, both in mental health as well as physical healing, why is it that it's not more well known in the world? And she simply said, when God wants this to be, it will happen. We don't need to push. Well, that was not a North American perspective that I'd learned, but a very beautiful perspective. And I felt a commitment rising in me at that time to do whatever I could to be a bridge person so that people in the outside of Brazil could learn more about Spiritism. So let me jump more to the present now and just say a few years ago, Stanley Krippner, who is very well known in the United States and internationally for writings that he has done on South American spirituality. He introduced me to a psychiatrist in Brazil by the name of Alexander Moreira Almeida. Yeah. And Alexander teaches both in Sao Paulo and also in the city where he lives, Juiz de Fora, in the medical schools. And he was extremely interested in forwarding research in the Spiritist psychiatric hospitals. So we got to know each other in one of my travels, and he introduced me to the leaders of several of the Spiritist psychiatric hospitals, and then I went to visit several of these hospitals. And in all, I have visited 7 of the hospitals, staying for lengths of time, not as a patient, but as a guest, and speaking with the administration, getting to know the doctors, nurses, practitioners, mediums, supervisors of mediums. And again, I was so profoundly impressed, and I thought, what can I do to forward the work here?
And what did impress you the most?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. What impressed me the most, I'll tell you what springs to mind is a particular man that I met who actually was born in France. and was in the position of being the supervisor of 110 mediums who worked at the hospital in Porto Alegre, the Spiritist Psychiatric Hospital there.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the trainer of mediums who would be working with the seriously ill mental health patients. So he was a trainer, but then on the other hand, he supervised some of the profound work that was done for the patients, as well as really attending to the psychosphere or the atmosphere in the hospital itself. And when I realized that there was someone doing such kinds of work, and also that this particular man is so grounded, so full of heart, so sensitive, and well balanced, I thought this is a model for where we can move in attending to the training of people who can work within spirituality, creating the spiritual component to integrative health care, so that we can have mental health care that not only attains to the biology of people and can diagnose if there's a physical problem that's creating the mental health issue, but we can attend to the psychological and social aspects, and then on top of it, also the spiritual aspects. So I have to say that particular model impresses me the most, and the man that I mentioned, who goes by the name of Jihad, impressed me deeply.
It's interesting, Emma, because many people, historically speaking, especially in the Spiritist movement, those who feel compelled to reaching out and to creating new strategies to help people, they have been through some form of, difficulty either with themselves or like Chico Xavier with his sister, and then, for example, Divaldo Franco, the way he was brought into Spiritism through his own experience. And then we can tell that, just like, Dr. Rediger, you were brought into this from a very, let's say, from a health practitioner perspective. Are we right on the way we are interpreting it?
Well, yes, you're very right, of course. But I should say that I also have a personal aspect to this, which is at a very young age, I discovered meditation, and I felt deeply that going into a deeper realm of consciousness would be a way that I could answer some of the questions that I had as a teenager that were extremely important to me. And I was passionate about getting to the roots of those particular questions.
That's very interesting. Emma, we're going to give a very short break and be right back with you to learn more from you.
Thank you.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book And Life Goes On by the Spirit André Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The Spiritist magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
then listen to our CD, Unfolding Our Spiritual Nature, Path of Harmony by Dr. Raul Teixeira. The CD has questions and answers on euthanasia, suicide, pain relief, past life therapy, prayer and better attunement, law and affinity, the spirit world, raising our thoughts, and much more. You can purchase the CD by visiting SSB online bookstore at www.ssbaltimore.org.
And now we return to our program.
We are talking about the Spiritist Psychiatric Hospital, Spiritism and Mental Health with Dr. Bragdon. Emma Bragdon has a long experience with transpersonal psychology, spiritual exploration, expeditions to John of God in Brazil. She is the director of Spiritual Alliances and the Foundation of Energy Therapists. A lot to share with us. She has a beautiful background. Her father was a scientist, her mother was a nurse. A very good combination. And as she said herself, beautiful planning, reincarnatory planning, so she can fulfill her tasks, her mission in this life, which is, to say the least, sharing about Spiritism and its beautiful approach to humanity on Earth. And before we bring her back in, we want to share with you a case on spiritual disability. It's a case of Charles, who was a mentally impaired boy, and then he died, and he didn't die. He didn't die. His spirit was evoked in a mediumistic meeting at Kardec's time. Can you believe it? This is in the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec. By the way, second part of the book, it's amazing. We call it's almost like spirit reality show, but not to entertain ourselves. On the contrary, to educate ourselves so we live better. Let's listen to this and learn from it and discuss it later with Dr. Bragdon.
Charles de Saint-G, mentally impaired. Parisian Society, 1860. Charles de Saint-G was a mentally impaired 13-year-old boy who was still living and whose intellectual faculties were so impaired that he could not even recognize his own parents. He could barely feed himself. He had experienced the complete developmental suspension of his entire organic system. To St. Louis.
Would you tell us if we could evoke this child's spirit?
You can invoke him as if you were invoking the spirit of a deceased person.
Your response would seem to imply that we may evoke him at any time.
Yes, his soul is held to his body by physical ties, but not spiritual ones. It can free itself at any time.
Evocation of Charles de Saint-G.
I am a poor spirit held to this earth like a bird tied down by one leg.
In your present state as a spirit, are you aware of your complete impairment in this world?
Of course, I feel my captivity very well.
While your body is sleeping and your spirit is free, do you have thoughts as lucid as if you were in a normal state?
While my unfortunate body rests, I am a bit freer to reach out towards the heaven to which I aspire.
While in the spirit state, do you experience any sensations of pain as a result of your corporeal state?
Yes, since it is a punishment.
Can you remember your previous existence?
Oh yes, it is the cause of my present exile.
What kind of existence was it?
That of an incorrigible young man during the reign of Henry III.
You said that your present condition is a punishment, so you didn't choose it?
No.
In your current state of impairment, how can your present life serve for your advancement?
My state is not an impairment before God, who imposed it on me.
Can you see how long your current existence will last?
No, but sooner or later I will return to my homeland.
What did you do as a spirit between your previous existence and your present incarnation?
God imprisoned me because I was a thoughtless spirit.
In your waking state, are you aware of what goes on around you despite of the imperfections of your organs?
I can see and hear, but my body neither understands nor perceives anything.
Could we do anything to help you?
Nothing. To St. Louis.
Could the prayers we say for incarnate spirit have the same effectiveness as for an errant spirit?
Prayers are always good and are agreeable to God. In this poor spirit's case, they do not do him any good at present, but they will serve him later. God will take them into account.
This evocation confirms what has always been said about the mentally impaired. The mental impairment does not correspond to the spirit impairment, regardless of the physical organs. The spirit enjoys all his faculties. The imperfection of the organs is only an obstacle to the free manifestation of thought. Thus, it is like a hale and hardy man whose limbs have been tied.
Yeah, this is a true case, true account brought in by Allan Kardec in the book Heaven and Hell. The case of Charles, an incarnate boy who had a mental disability and was evoked in a mediumistic meeting. You know, as he said, mental disabilities are like an exile, and you can read more about it also in the book Action and Reaction by Andrea Lewis when he talks about it. You know, these actual therapeutic exercises in mediumistic meetings, these evocations, are one of the approaches done in Spiritist hospitals in Brazil, like Casas André Luiz in São Paulo, and also the Spiritist Hospital André Luiz in Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais, Brazil. There they do such thing also to heal the mind and to do this counseling of the mind. So, Dr. Bragdon, have you had such experiences when you were visiting the psychiatric hospitals there in which they were doing mediumistic cases and either relieving the counseling the souls of obsessing spirits like spirit attachments that were causing mental illnesses, or such as the case of Charles in which there was the evocation of the spirit of the mentally ill person?
Yes, I have. And I've been to several disobsession sessions, actually every single hospital that I visited, the 7 hospitals that I visited in Brazil, one of which was Casa André Luiz in São Paulo. I went to disobsession meetings in every single one of them. And so, unfortunately, though, I can't say much about working with the developmentally impaired because only one of the hospitals, Casa André Luiz, worked with the developmentally impaired. Most of the other hospitals were working with serious mental illness, which involved something like bipolar condition or schizophrenia or other psychotic conditions. So,
but
you want me to go ahead?
No, please, go ahead.
You asked about my experience with the disobsession sessions?
Yes, exactly. And how they can, what's your intake in regard to disobsession sessions and the improvement of mental health?
Well, I don't know how many of your listeners know what the disobsession sessions are about. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say some preliminary things so that this isn't Greek to people who have never heard the concept, because we certainly don't have it here.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay. In the disobsession session, it's considered that a person who is suffering from a mental illness is likely has a particular weakness within themselves that has attracted a negatively motivated spirit. So this particular spirit may be attracted to them because of a prior relationship, meaning a relationship in a prior lifetime, or it may be a spirit that's attracted to them because the spirit wants to, in essence, have a feed off of them. So if one thinks of an alcoholic in this lifetime who continues to want to take a drink and is obsessed by that, that person might attract a spirit who has not gone on into the spirit realms but stays trapped in an earthly realm and literally attaches themselves to someone who is already prone to alcoholism, and then goes into a mental state where they actually experience the addiction themselves and getting what they think they need, which is more alcohol, or at least the state of consciousness one enters into when one is drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
So in a disobsession session, I'm glad to hear you say yes, Vanessa, because I don't have 5 generations of spiritists behind me. This is relatively new. In a disobsession session, then, what happens is one of the mediums, who is likely in a supervisory position, actually counsels the negatively motivated spirit, assisting that one to wake up to another level and then to go on in their own spiritual evolution, releasing the hold it has on the patient who is suffering from mental illness. And at the same time, the person who is suffering from mental illness will experience a kind of release even though they're not in the room. So it is, the disobsession is actually done when the patient is usually not in the room, and so it's healing at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience of that was very, very compelling. In fact, I was allowed to include footage on a disobsession session that happened in a hospital in Annapolis in one of the films that I did, which is called Spiritism, Bridging Spirituality and Health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very difficult to measure exactly what the effectiveness of these disobsession sessions are. But one can see that people experience a release, and through more stories than actual measured research, there is lots of evidence to show that people are positively impacted by this experience, do in on some occasions have a almost spontaneous remission from their illness. In other cases, it goes on over a longer period of time. But people do gain a release, and there are many schizophrenics or people who were given the diagnosis of schizophrenia in Brazil who have experienced this kind of disobsession within the hospitals, who then go on to be able to lead a life where they can be in relationship that's meaningful for them and also work, which is oftentimes not considered possible at all in the United States. So that is a very meaningful thing to look at if we're looking at, can schizophrenics recover and can they lead normal lives? So I would, from my experience, the disobsession sessions are extraordinary spiritual experiences for the people who are in the room leading the session itself in a compassionate way to assist the patient. And we know already that prayer and loving attention through others is very healing. That has been well documented in research. And disobsession could be considered a very powerful, long-lasting state of prayer that a group of people are in to benefit a particular person. So it's, and from my perspective, it's definitely worth more research. And hopefully we can put together more statistics on how many people are being helped and in what way they're being helped.
This is interesting. You're mentioning about statistics, because as a scientist myself, we know that you cannot bring compelling, you cannot even attract grant funds or the attention of more also serious scientists to it if you don't show them, the profile of the efficacy of such approaches. So I'm always surprised when people in the Spiritist community are resistant to opening the doors to serious people who would like to know, not because we are telling, oh, we are healing XYZ many people, but because we need to show, and numbers are the best way to show, as you said, statistics, to tell, we should pay serious attention to this approach because it's efficient, right?
Well, that's what I believe as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing the kind of writing I'm doing. But on the other hand, I have come to deeply appreciate the Spiritist leaders that I've spoken with, and I can understand a resistance to putting together the numbers, because as soon as you have numbers and statistics, then you're in a situation of comparing who is doing a better job than the next person, or what organization, what hospital is doing a better job than another hospital. And as soon as you start comparing in that way, then judgment enters in. Oh, this organization or this hospital or this team or this clinic is not doing as good a job as that clinic or that hospital or that team. And then what enters into human relationships is competition, jealousy, sadness, at perhaps not performing as well as the next person. And so if you don't have qualitative statistical measurements, then you don't run the risk of setting up those kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
So I was very frustrated at first when I was looking for statistics, and I thought, wait a minute, this is so good. Where are the statistics? Why? Isn't it set up to create more research and statistics? And then I understood the other perspective. And I must say that I'm in a much more accepting point of view now of when God wants this to be, it will happen. And hopefully it will happen in a way where there's no, we aren't creating ill will around who's doing the most effective work.
That's beautiful, Emma. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful perspective. And you're so right, because as you're speaking, it reminded me of my great-great-grandfather when he was, he came from Italy to the countryside of Brazil to a small city named Itobi. It's very small, and it's mostly farmers. And it's a little city where many of my relatives still live, and my grandma especially, who I owe a lot in regard to Spiritism. And they have a Spiritist center that is past like 100 years already. It's one of the first waves of Spiritist centers in Brazil. So they founded this Spiritist center called the Luz e Caridade, Light and Charity. And they, at the time, psychiatry couldn't do much. It was very barbaric, the way they were treating patients, because we didn't have psychopharmacology to help us out. Psychotherapy was not, polished enough to give us some immediate tools for the general public that were facing some form of mental illness. So their center became center attention in, let's say, in Brazil itself. So based on stories that the people in the center tell us, and you can tell if you go there, they had this, it's almost like a hospital, but they had to lock people into these cells, and it still exists, okay? On the back of the Spiritist Center, people were brought in, they were kept in these cells, and in the front part of it, which means the Spiritist Center would be doing these obsessions, talking to the obsessors, evoking even the incarnate spirit, and then later they would release without any other thing. And then you ask, how come this happened? And it was history, and then simply, it changed because new generations came in, psychiatry expanded its approach with psychopharmacology, psychotherapy, new approaches, and then, Spiritist centers like theirs at the time didn't need to be the main provider for people who were in that experience. So as you're saying, and where are the statistics on this? You can tell you only have the accounts of the elderly who still live there and tell us these amazing stories about people who were mentally ill. They were brought in, they were kept in a cell, and while these obsession meetings were going on, sometimes for days, and then when they were released, they were better. And we would say, so by publishing this book, Spiritism and Mental Health, you're vouching for the fact that Spiritism can certainly add to efficiently approach mental illnesses. Are we right? What is the main goal of this book?
Well, certainly I want to have it be a contributor to the dialogue of what can be effective in terms of helping those who are mentally ill, not only those with serious mental illness, which, as you said, are almost 5% of the public in North America, but also those who consider themselves to be have some kind of mental illness, like a mood disorder. For instance, they feel depressed, they feel anxious, and they've been motivated to go to their doctor and talk to them and get help. So there's, at this point in the United States, 1 out of 8 people are taking psychiatric medications. So that might be for a more mild depression, or it might be a very serious depression. But it's still a considerable number of people. So my knowledge is, at this point, is that the standard of care in the United States is psychiatric medication. And in the recent past, especially in the last 2 years, there's been quite a wonderful amount of information that's been coming out, both in articles in the New York Times, the New York Review of Books, as well as major publishers, which document that the long-term use of psychiatric medications can be extremely harmful and actually lead to people being so mentally disabled that they are then apply for a kind of governmental assistance because they're unable to work. Mm-hmm. So clearly there's an enormous problem right now going on, and there is 6 times the amount of serious mental illness today that there was in 1955. So how do we address it? And my sense is that psychiatry and conventionally trained physicians have a tremendous amount to give us, and they're a very important part of the puzzle in their training. And also sociologists, social workers have a tremendous amount to give us in terms of helping people deal with the psychological and social stressors that we have today. Mm-hmm. But where do we go to take care of the spiritual element? And as you were mentioning, the spiritual element might mean that we have to go and look into our past lives to recognize that some of the situation we're in today might be have presented itself because we need to balance the books, as it were. We need to atone for something that was done in the past, or we need a learning opportunity to test us so that we can become stronger and more evolved. I don't myself subscribe to the idea that we are punished for things we do in a past life, more that we are balancing the books, as it were, or having new opportunities for growth.
You're right, and I'm sorry to interrupt you this, but you're right when you say we're not punished. And I understand also that Kardec, when sometimes at his time, some spirits were using that language, is because of the strong influence of the church at the time. But deeply, when you see Spiritism, doesn't say that we punish. If the word is used, it's just more a cultural background that is, it's like a noise of cultural background that is there. That's how I read it, than actual. So I would say what you say matches completely with the Spiritist thought as well.
Thank you. Thanks. So we're left a bit in a vacuum in North America, and I think Europe too, in terms of how do we help people deal with the spiritual aspect of mental illness. And as we've been discussing, the Spiritists have been developing these particular forms of dealing with the spiritual component of mental illness for at least 100 years. And I've visited hospitals that have been developing their programs since the 1930s in Brazil. And in fact, one particular man, a Dr. Ferreira, you probably are familiar with, did enough research in the 1930s that people quote him as recording that 30% of the people that were hospitalized that came to Uberaba and his hospital were healed of schizophrenia or psychotic type illnesses that they had, which is very impressive. We certainly can't do that within the system that we have now in place that relies so heavily on psychiatric medication.
You're right, Dr. Inácio Ferreira, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he had.
Right.
He was amazing. And Emma, we have here with us one of the team workers at Kardec Radio. You know him, Daniel Santos. He is the Spiritist out of Baltimore, and he's also a PharmD PhD. He's a neuroscientist. He has a question for you. Hi, Daniel. You can go ahead and ask your question to Emma.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
Hey, hello. Hi, Dr. Bragdon.
Hi, Daniel.
First of all, thank you for being here with us. We met again last year in the Spiritist Medical Congress in Washington, D.C., where
I
we
remember
had
very well.
the president.
We went out for lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And we have lunch together. I had a question that I didn't have, the opportunity to ask at that time, but since you're bringing this new book, and it's going to be here in Baltimore, I believe, in 2 weeks. My question is, how do you deal with the non-believers when we talk about this new approach to treat, especially regards to psychiatric hospital or to treat mentally ill people? I mean, because we know here in America, this is going to be a new a new paradigm in a way to treat people, the model that you have been learning in Brazil and bringing in your book. So how do you deal with this? Just want to know your personal experience on this.
Well,
thank you.
That's a very profound question, I think, especially for those of us who want to forward integrative mental health care, is how do we approach non-believers. But one of the things that I came upon as I was researching for the book Spiritism and Mental Health is a Gallup study that was done in 2005 that mentioned that 32% of people in North America believe that the spirits of dead loved ones can communicate with us. And there was a Harris poll in 2003 that reported that 51% of people in North America believe in ghosts and 27% believe in reincarnation. So I think if you recognize that the numbers, those are very substantial numbers, and if so many people are actually believing in reincarnation and ghosts, then it becomes a matter of connecting the dots. Because if you believe in ghosts, then you need to also, I mean, you don't need to, but you could ask that particular person, well, where do those ghosts hang out? You know, do they just show up at Halloween?
Exactly.
And and how do we? I mean, if there are ghosts, are there some positive ones and some more negatively motivated? And if there are ghosts, wouldn't it be best for us to communicate just with the ghosts that are benevolent? And how do we do that?
That's true.
And could it enhance our quality of life if we do that? And
okay, thank you.
Okay. You got enough.
Thank you, Daniel, for bringing such an interesting question. And Emma, we are delighted to hear from you, and we can tell there's so much more to learn from your experience and the much of you have become an advocate for this beautiful cause, which is bringing this deep spiritist awareness, especially to the mental health practices in general. I know we'll be together in 2 weeks at the Spiritist of Baltimore on Saturday, October 1st at 6 p.m., when you're going to talk more deeply about the book, Spiritism and Mental Health, and then the next morning at the Spiritist of Virginia. Would you like to share your final thoughts for today? We're sad to let you go for the time being, but we know here's an invitation for you to be back with us when you're available to share more about these experiences.
Thank you very much for your welcome. And I just wanted to mention that the Spiritism and Mental Health is available now. It will be probably on Amazon.com soon. Mm-hmm. But if people want more information about the book and how to purchase it, they can go to my website, which is emmabragdon.com. And I also have another book which is a companion to Spiritism and Mental Health, which is called Resources for Extraordinary Healing. And that particular book, which is just out now in ebook form, it shows resources in the United States and Europe that can assist people to deal with the spiritual aspect of mental illness. And it may be that they can do it through Spiritism, but there are also other ways of working with a spiritual component. And unfortunately, we don't have enough Spiritist centers in the United States and Europe right now to, I think, hold and manage all of the people who are now suffering from mental illness. So some people in various areas have to deal with it in different ways. So that's why I created resources for extraordinary healing. But all the information about both of those books and the films I've done on Spiritism are available on emmabragdon.com. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you all and the people who listen to your show. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma Bragdon. Here we are with Dr. Bragdon. Thank God this show is going to be on demand, so you can go back, listen to it again. And if you want to know more, go to emmabragdon.com, and she said, get to know of the many tools and resources to learn about Spiritism and especially about Spiritism and mental health. Share this news in your Spiritist center if you're listening to this show, and bring Emma Bragdon there. So other people, especially in the North American culture, the English-speaking people, can get a hold of these beautiful teachings. We're going to give a short break and come back with Dr. Ricardo Bianco, who is going to tell us especially about his practice and his Spiritist experience and his PhD thesis on a Spiritist Psychiatric Hospital.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Now in English, the book Missionaries of the Light by the Spirit Andrea Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Join the Third Spiritist Forum of New York on September 25th. The theme is, It is Good to Be Good, featuring the keynote speaker, Dr. Stephen Post, renowned and leading scientist on compassion and health, as well as Dr. Petrillo and Dr. Saloni. More information at www.mvscenter.org. That is www.mvscenter.org.
And now we return to our program.
We're talking about Spiritist Psychiatric Hospitals, Spiritism, mental health. We just had the honor to have in our show Dr. Emma Bragdon. She has been doing great research and helping as well experiences in Spiritist centers, Spiritist Psychiatric hospitals, and she is bringing a lot of information in this newly published book, Spiritism and Health. And as she said, you can find it in a few days or weeks at Amazon.com, or go to our website, emmabragdon.com. She is advocating for this beautiful cause of Spiritist awareness and how it can transform, let's say, rock the mental health practices. It can really change the paradigm. And to tell us more about this paradigm, we are here with Dr. Ricardo Bianco, who is a clinical psychologist with expertise in behavioral medicine, multicultural issues, general mental health. He is located in Boston, Massachusetts. He has a master's degree in counseling psychology from Boston College and a doctorate degree in clinical psychology from the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology. He is living in the United States, though he was born in Brazil, and he's also a spiritist. His PhD thesis was on a Spiritist Psychiatric hospital. He has a lot to share with us. Hi, Dr. Bianco. Welcome to Kardec Radio.
Hello, Vanessa. Thank you very much for having me in your program and the wonderful work you do with the Kardec Radio, and to the listeners that are giving us the honor to spend some time with us today.
Thank you. Ricardo, you are a spiritist. How long have you been a spiritist?
I think it's kind of as long as I remember. My parents were spiritists and going to spiritual centers where I grew up in São Paulo, Brazil. And I remember, reading the gospel in accordance to Spiritism at an early age with my brother and my parents. And but I think what struck me for the first time to really follow everything was a talk that a Greek professor in one of the spiritual centers there gave in 1977, if I'm not wrong. So I was about 16 years old, and he was talking about, the transitions that this planet is going through, from a planet of atonement to a planet of, better things to come from a spiritual standpoint. And that talk really struck a chord on me to really, there's a lot of things out there that I need to learn and read about. And from there, I studied, mediumship for about 10 years, and I became one of the youngest, instructors at that spiritual center at that time, and that's probably what led me into psychology. So that's in a nutshell.
That's very interesting. And then you immerse yourself into the mental health practice, came to the United States, and I know you participate in the Somerville Spiritist group, the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts, right? As a spiritist.
Yes, that's right. I've been going there fairly often and giving some talks. They ask us to talk about mental health and spirituality, and teaching some techniques that I use with my patients in the setting that everybody could apply in their lives in order to have a better quality from a mental health standpoint. So.
And when you're talking about mental health and Spiritism, how do you think Spiritism can help in the improvement of mentally ill patients?
Mm-hmm. I follow what I call the biopsychosocial spiritual model in my practice. So what that means is, human beings are a composition of all of these aspects: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. So initially, when you see your patient, you're going to talk about, what is making the fire go up, and what is the current issues that they are experiencing. And then you kind of address that, and right after that, you can see there are other things, intertwined with the person's issues. And to me, spirituality is, of course, a continuum of all of this. And believing in reincarnation, having a lot of experience around that area, I have incorporated that understanding with my patients. Some patients are, of course, totally open to that idea right off the bat, but with discussion about spirituality in general, it is really important that people consider that aspect of their lives as part of their being whole as a human being. And there are studies out there showing that patients are interested in talking about spirituality, and us doctors have been avoiding that for several reasons. And I see most of my patients being really happy to incorporate that in the conversation. And from a spiritist standpoint, if you believe that there is a sequence of events throughout different lifetimes, you can really explore current issues, current problems that you see a potential root cause not only in your childhood or adolescent years, but with other lifetimes. And one of the techniques I use is hypnosis, doing age regression. That's how we generally call age regression. But some of these patients will go beyond the womb. They will go beyond the birth.
Naturally, right?
Yes, exactly. And I don't, using that technique, I don't suggest anything. It's just a natural course of, the human mind and the spirit of that individual accessing the Akashic records, or whatever is from a spiritual standpoint that is already present with that person into therapy. And it's such a powerful experience to the patient, and I get all that every time I see a different patient, bringing stories and things like that.
So, Dr. Bianco, based on Spiritism, as we were reading questions 371 and onwards in the Spirits book by Allan Kardec, you can tell that the mental illness is not in the physical body, though it expresses itself in imbalances of the neurochemistry, sometimes actual neuroanatomical lesions. But from the Spiritist perspective, the root cause of it is in the mind of the spirit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do believe that. The physical realm is the last piece of this whole puzzle that is affected by something that is already ingrained in your spiritual DNA. Let's put it that way. There are a lot of researchers trying to understand that, and I see science evolving to really understand that connection, and finally recognize that if we are only preoccupied in treating that scratch or wound that it is already in your physical body, we're going to just doing palliative type of intervention. So the root cause is, in my opinion, in the spiritual realm, and I have seen a lot of work done in that realm that will benefit the person from a physical standpoint. So
and Dr. Bianco, we are going to and to give our listener an example, because we heard in the first part of the show the story of Charles in the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec. This boy who was incarnated, and he was evoked, his spirit was evoked into a mediumistic meeting at Kardec's time, and he tells us how he feels. So first of all, we need to know that they are there to learn something as much as the family that takes care of everybody else, but there is also the awareness. They are fully aware of what's going around, but it's not restricted to the body. And we want to show to our listener a true account that was brought in through the mediumistic hands of Divaldo Franco in a book that is not yet translated into English, but it's named in Portuguese Tormentos da Obsessão, Disturbances of Obsession. So, and the spirit author is Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, and he's going to talk about this in chapter 21st. I would like us all to hear it, and then we'll ask you to make some comments in that regard.
Okay.
At Hospital Esperanza, founded by the devoted Euripides Bassanufo in the spiritual plane during the 1930s, a group of dedicated doctors and therapists were about to rescue Evaldo, who spent more than 10 years in extreme subjugation in lower zones. Dr. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda describes Evaldo's status as unconscious and under a deep hypnotic trance. But most surprising of his condition is that he is encapsulated in a dark cocoon.
What is this cocoon?
Asked Dr. Miranda to Dr. Messer, the coordinating surgeon. Well, Evaldo's mind has created this cocoon due to his guilty conscience and self-punishing vibrations.
Why did that happen?
He created this cocoon to escape and hide from his own misery built especially in his last reincarnation. Before his last reincarnation, he spent 10 years being prepared to work both in spiritism and politics due to debts acquired in the previous lives. He was born in a noble spiritist home. His mother was loving and devoted. He even got married to a good spiritist wife. But as soon as he became an influential politician, he claimed no time for spiritist commitments. He then quickly attuned to corrupted individuals and engaged in extramarital affairs. And the unexpected happened. His wife was taken by a fatal cancer. He got into deep depression once he realized the great damage he did to many lives. In 3 years, he marched quickly to death. After 10 years under spiritual obsession, he was rescued by our team of workers due to his mother's intercession. And here we are preparing for a very delicate surgery in which he will need a team of surgeons to free him from his cocoon and clog his own production of self-punishing guilt.
As Jesus said, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded.
Let us all be careful and preserve ourselves from doing evil and not fulfilling our spiritual commitment. So we supplicate for divine help, asking for protection and inspiration to walk into the difficult journey of our spiritual ascension. This case was extracted from chapter 21, Experiência em Comum, in the book Tormentos da Obsessão by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco.
This is very unique. Here we are talking about mental illness and actually a mental disability that can be expressed in our spiritual body in the form that we just learned from Evaldo's experience, and telling us deeply that mental illness is not in the physical body, it's actually in the mind of the spirit. So Dr. Bianco, when you hear cases like this, if we think about this spirit preparing to reincarnate again after such experience, or any of the other nature, and then coming to your office with deep depression, how many patients can you tell sometimes they are deeply depressed because of previous lives' contents, these self-punishing, guilty feelings? Can you recognize the spiritual, or as Dr. Stevenson says, Ian Stevenson, the diathenetic elements, the ones that transpose death and go into other lives and are expressed into mental disturbances?
Yeah, I would say, thankfully here in Massachusetts, people in general, even among the Brazilian communities, they are more open to spirituality from that aspect. So the conversation will eventually navigate. Some people will have more of a resistance to talk about it and really grasp, maybe what you're experiencing now in terms of anxiety and depression has a root cause that is beyond our understanding of this current life. And, through a few sessions, patients will start giving a better thought about that possibility. And, you can bring other religious beliefs that people have specifically, and try to somehow integrate that. And then I introduce hypnosis that I heard in this vignette as a tool that can open that gate a little further. And it is so clear. We come to this planet, we reincarnate, and most of us will bring a karmic baggage with us, and due to guilt and fear, all of these feelings that are really rooted in our souls. And then once we reincarnate, we have the opportunity to move forward and try to navigate and kind of take those negative elements out of our lives. But like in the vignette, the person made some choices that reconnected him or her, to the same root cause of experiences of other lifetimes. And then you start seeing depressive symptoms and anxieties that you cannot explain why you're having that, because in your current life, a lot of patients, things are happening in a way that life is good, and still you have that feeling inside yourself that you cannot grasp. Why do I have that? And it's so deep rooted that only going beyond the most immediate issues that you will understand what the problem is. So.
And in this case, we have a chat room participant here that is asking about the book we just mentioned in the vignette about the unique experience. It's book Tormentos da Obsessão. It's still in Portuguese, though, published by Divaldo Franco's publisher. And you can find it probably at Amazon.com or go to DivaldoFranco.com and go to their bookstore if you read Portuguese. If not, you can help us get the translation. So, Dr. Bianco, we're talking about these self-generating mental illnesses. As Spiritism says, it's triggered mostly by a guilt conscience. One, as you said, choices that were made. So you had experience as a researcher and a psychologist in a Spiritist Psychiatric hospital in Brazil. Can you share with us how it was in regard to that, the research time you've spent there and what you've found out, and how do you think this can be possibly bridged in to the United States?
Yeah, that research was part of my doctoral project that I had to work to get my doctoral degree. And I was blessed to be introduced to, the directors, the people who are responsible for this psychiatric hospital that follows exactly the biopsychosocial spiritual model in Curitiba, Brazil. It's in the neighborhood of Bom Retiro. It's called Bom Retiro Psychiatric Hospital, Spiritist Psychiatric Hospital. And I had the privilege to witness one of the most wonderful interventions that I think should be a model for all future, physical, spiritual, mental health treatments in the future. And luckily, we have a few of those in Brazil. And the work I did was interesting. I really enjoyed that. I selected 12 patients that were admitted into the program. I think was the month of August. And then I went back there 6 months later to check on these same patients, their status 6 months later after they have gone from this period of treatment, and check then the results of those treatments, and of course following the biopsychosocial spiritual model. I can talk a little bit more about that. But basically, I saw these 12 patients. I did some interviews, and I checked their medical records and admission records and everything. And they had major mental illnesses there, like bipolar disorders, some schizophrenia patients, and a combination of anxiety and depression and drug use, alcohol abuse, those type of things. Many of them had in their past like spiritual experiences that some of them could explain better than others. And finally, they got to a point where they lost family members, they lost their jobs, and they lost almost everything, and they end up in this hospital. And again, you go there, you are having the issues really currently and acute happening to you. So you have an intervention of medical doctors, psychotropic medications. That is the first intervention that they kind of work with the patient. And then over time, you are introduced to other types of medications that are herbal-based. And in the course of that, you are also given the opportunity to have spiritual treatments, as we know in Brazil, through passes or healing, imposition of hands and other interventions, disobsessions, sessions. And also one very important aspect of so this goes with the biopsychosocial model, reintegrating the person into the workplace, doing training, doing arts and crafts and plays and playing music and enjoying nature. So you see, it's everything that we should be experiencing. Each one of us, they have there in this place to be treated, and the results are unbelievably positive. And that was my finding when I went back there. 6 months later, some of them were in the verge of being discharged, and others were continuing their treatment. But from a clinical mental health standpoint, I saw an improvement in all of them, 100%. And I used, all the tools, instruments that will measure that to come up with that conclusion. Interviews with doctors and family members. Another important aspect that we see in Brazil more than in the United States is the participation of family, and they make a point of have the family, some family members integrated in the process of treatment of the patient, so they can also understand, mental illness and the perspective of the patient, and not just, try to help without having that knowledge. And it's a wonderful model that I wish could be spread out throughout the world.
So in that case, how did you, from your perspective, how do you think? We're just talking to Dr. Emma Bragdon. She is helping out by publishing this Spiritism and Mental Health textbook. I remember talking to Dr. Jeff Rediger months ago in our show at Kardec Radio when he said, there's so much to do and we have to engage to really bring this awareness to the United States and be more efficient. It's about efficiency. Right now, probably science cannot explain the whole 9 yards of this approach, but it works. So how do you think, because you're working in the mental health practice, how do you think we can, little by little, step into this realm of changing the mental health care and bring Spiritist approach to make it more efficient?
Yeah, two things there. Brazil took, several years to get to the point where they were able to, let's have a psychiatric spiritist hospital and implement spiritual interventions to the treatment of patients. In the United States, for example, my work, I do the psychological part and everything, and then I have whatever resources I have of people who will do spiritual interventions, but they, something outside of my practice that I have to refer to those people, including, the spiritual centers available in Boston, in the Boston area. So they go there and have the spiritual part done in terms of treatment, and then they come back to my practice, and we talk about it, and they all see the benefit of that. So as long as we keep our work, let's say, in terms of expanding the work in the spiritual centers here in the United States, I think eventually we'll find the moment to actually integrate a practice similar to the one in Brazil, to the psychiatric hospital in Brazil. And in a way, it's going to be, that's what had been in Brazil, word of mouth. And it's so in your face that, let's finally integrate everything. But we probably have one advantage these days, like in the year 2011 now, where science is actually making that connection. A lot of authors and scientists and physicists are concluding, the spiritual realm and how that is connected with, physical and mental health, that maybe we can accelerate that process here in the United States because of this scientific evidence that we are noticing more and more in the recent years. And it takes a little bit of, let's say, the word guts to actually have someone or a group of people, let's do this because we see it works. It's not just, religious aspect, but it is scientific from the standpoint of the spirit. We put spirit into the religious realm and everything. However, spirit and spiritism and the spirit dimension is what actually is real. So I think science is coming closer to that conclusion as well, and then the transition will be something that is really natural. Have spiritual healers and
exactly.
doing these obsession sessions like I saw in this psychiatric hospital with amazing results that a group of mediums were working with the spirits that were influencing a person to be depressed or anxious or psychotic, and then once they work with the spiritual realm and the understanding that person has to have of that spiritual realm, healing is almost instant in a lot of cases. It's just unbelievable. And the work of Emma Bragdon is an amazing work because these hospitals, they are a laboratory, waiting to happen, so to speak, because the evidence is out there, everything is out there. It's just a matter of gathering that and then integrating with science that we are learning here in this country and in other parts of the world.
Yeah, you're right. So, Dr. Bianco, we're going to give a short break and be right back with you.
We will return to our program after these messages.
If you have any questions or comments, please call Kardec Radio at 858-769-4705.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Missionaries of the Light by the Spirit Andrea Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today. Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit Andrea Luis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
And now we return to our program.
We are here talking about Spiritist Psychiatric Hospitals, and Dr. Ricardo Bianco from Massachusetts is here with us. He's a clinical psychologist with lots of experience in mental health in general, and he has a master's degree in counseling psychology from Boston College and a doctorate degree in clinical psychology from the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology. He had his PhD thesis done on a Spiritist Psychiatric Hospital in Brazil, and he's sharing with us his vision on how how efficient the Spiritist approach can be to treat mental illnesses. Because bottom line, we already know. A lot of the Spiritist teachings are the vanguard of humanity. A lot of the teachings, especially by Dr. Andrea Luis, through the mediumistic hands of Chico Xavier, brought teachings that decades later were proved by science and still await further confirmation in other aspects. That's why at Spiritist Out of Baltimore, every Thursday, we have been working on a study session on the several chapters of the book Evolution in Two Worlds, which is especially talking about this. This upcoming Thursday, by the way, is going to be about chapter 15, which is spiritual parasitism that can cause lots of types of mental illnesses. To read more about all these things, where do you go? So here are 3 main websites for you to get these amazing Spiritist books. The bookstore of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, www.ssbaltimore.org. The bookstore of the United States Spiritist Council, www.spiritist.us, spiritist.us, and also ediceiofamerica.com, ediceiofamerica.com. In these mainly 3 websites, you can get lots of Spiritist books in English, Portuguese, Spanish. And rejoice, because the more we read about it, the less ignorant we're going to be, and we can help reach out to other people, whether they're in our families, in our social circles, or very far away. That's why Kardec Radio is here for you, and Dr. Bianco is still here with us, sharing his experience. As he said, if you go to a Spiritist Psychiatric Hospital, I remember visiting it in Belo Horizonte, Ricardo, when the Hospital Espírita André Luiz, they have an amazing work there, and they provide the Spiritist resources for patients. They don't force anybody into this, and they actually have numbers to compare those who actually also submit themselves to these passage sessions, these obsession meetings, and also inspirational study sessions on Spiritism. They recover much faster, and they live much better. So you've seen it yourself, right, when you were doing your PhD thesis?
Yeah, and I found it interesting also. They of course do not force anyone to do it, given your personal beliefs and everything. But I noticed, and they confirmed that to me, that in that hospital specifically, almost 100% of the patients wanted to have the spiritual interventions, even if they did not believe in them. And the results were as positive as, of course, if you believed in the whole process of the spiritual intervention. So they were, surprised by that. This is really working. The spiritual aspect is really part of it and helping the process of healing. And then the acceptance. they didn't, of course, needed to change their beliefs, but they knew they were better. They knew that they had a quicker process of healing compared to other periods in their lives that they just went to the psychiatrist or just doing medical interventions. It's amazing.
Yeah. So Dr. Bianco, we actually have Kirsten de Mello here, who is in the team of Cardiac Radio. She's a nurse, and she is willing to ask you a question. Hi,
Sure.
Kirsten. Welcome in.
Hi, how are you? Hi, thank you, Dr. Bianco, for having me on the show, and thank you, Dr. Anceloni, as well. It's really a pleasure, and it's so fascinating, very educational listening to you guys speak on this particular subject. Hi, Dr. Bianco. Good talking to you. And my question for you, professionally, I am a nurse and have been for a number of years, and my question for you is, as a healthcare professional, do you have, and as a spiritist myself as well, do you have advice for spiritists that are healthcare professionals or not in terms of how to deal with patients they encounter or just people and their mental health approaches in a more therapeutic manner? Not saying that we're going to go around giving therapy to everyone, but I've noticed through my schooling we don't yet have a very fine-tuned way to approach patients from a more spiritual perspective. Do you have any advice on the matter and how to better approach them from a spiritist perspective?
Yeah, I think that is a process, and as you are noticing, different people will react differently. And for some patients, it may take a little longer to have that patient be more comfortable to introduce spirituality. It's a lot of you as being in the medical services, being tuned with the patient in terms of what is the language that the patient uses. That can be, from best case scenario, totally open to spirituality, and someone who is really more reticent about it. That's what I try to do, and maybe my training with mediumship, and each one of us has that capacity to be in tune with the patient. And if we believe in spirituality, you are starting to observe other phenomena around you and the patient, and then find the right moment to talk about. You don't need to go, straight to reincarnation or anything like that, but talk about things that strike a chord with the patient, and it is clearly coming from a spiritual realm. The patient is finally opening up, a little door there, and then you kind of keep plowing there, always gently, always with respect to the person's beliefs and everything. But to me also, if you as a therapist, as a nurse, as a medical doctor, is open to everything, and that's the biggest secret there, is for us to be open to everything. Then that understanding that everything is connected comes so naturally into the therapy process that the person starts to understand that themselves and become open to other possibilities, other ideas. And again, they don't need to jump in 100% to the idea, but I don't think God is really expecting us to do that anyways. It's just the openness to the experience that is sufficient in a lot of cases, that triggers something, in this connection, mind, body, spirit connection to the patient, that finally allows healing to take place, and understanding. And healing, a lot of times, instances, is awareness. The awareness of that is actually what opens the gate. And then if you have this dimension of awareness, and you are naturally open to the process of yourself, and then it's karma being dissolved right there. If we want to use that language, we don't need to suffer anymore, and then you move on. You move with your life, even if you have diabetes and things that are more difficult to cure. But with that understanding, you are really giving yourself another opportunity to life from another understanding.
Yeah, we're talking about awareness. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for this good question and for being with us, helping Kardec Radio. Dr. Bianco, we are in the last part of our show, and we would like to ask you, what would be your advice to our audience in regard to this needed awareness on spirituality and especially the spiritual approach to mental illnesses?
Yeah, we've been discussing the importance of integrating, all aspects of our lives, the bio, psycho, social, spiritual aspects. So if you understand that we are made up of all of these dimensions, you start to pay attention that you have to give attention to everything. If we are gaining a lot of weight, if you have bad eating habits, or if we're drinking too much, we are immediately affecting, the physical body. If we feel we are isolated socially, we have difficulties in relationships and personal relationships and work, then we have to be aware of that and work that aspect of our lives. And the psychological aspect, why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? You kind of become the observer of yourself, and then you start asking those questions like an observer of yourself, and then you'll probably get answers that in a different way. And then spirituality. If you and again, it doesn't matter what religion you practice. Give some time of the week to yourself and to your spirit, to enrich your spirit through meditation, through reading books, through talking to other people, sharing. Even if it is 10 minutes a week, start with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's very practical. Very practical.
Yes, and that's how I start with my patients. I teach a few breathing techniques that yogis have been using forever, and then what I tell them, let's breathe this way. And it's not for us to connect with God right now. In fact, we are always connected, but the understanding we need to do something to connect. But yogis do that to actually calm down their bodies, their mind and their bodies, and then they're going to go and have a spiritual experience, so to speak. They'll do astral projections, they will do many other spiritual experiences. So it's actually, giving yourself these practical opportunities in every aspect of your lives that are very simple. And then knowing the integration of all of this, and then the understanding is something different. And then life changes just like that.
You're right. Dr. Bianco, we are truly honored to having had you here at Kardec Radio, and hopefully we'll bring you back. Here's the invitation. Please come back, because we need to learn more and spread this awareness, because as you said, healing is awareness, and we need you there also to help us raise this awareness about our true spiritual nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you for the listeners, and we'll be back one day.
So, dear listener, we're talking about mental health. We're talking about ourselves being spirits. And in the book, Among Brothers of Other Lands, chapter 40, the spirit of Ernest O'Brien in 1965, through the hands of Chico Xavier, he said, "You and I can be firm in truth, but no one of us is guiltless. We fail more frequently than we think. In other words, we easily fall into weakness, selfishness, intolerance, cruelty, or impatience. Whenever it happens, the obsessing spirits bring to you their influence. Insanity can appear. Then you must pray in order to find a practical way of freeing yourself. Think about this, dear listener. The tip for all of us. None of us, when we look at mentally ill people, we cannot judge them, saying, oh, here's the criminal of the past. Though the spirits say that they come with this guilt conscience, but who are we to cast a stone? As Ernest O'Brien is saying here, we all have our imperfections, and we need to watch out, because when we least expect, insanity can come full force, like in the book Obsession by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, already in English. You can find it in the SSB bookstore, ssbaltimore.org/bookstore. So they recommend that we pray. So let us think about this moment as a prayerful moment. The upcoming shows at Kardec Radio are next week. We're going to have near-death experiences with the pioneer in the field, Raymond Moody Jr. Dr. Moody Jr. is going to be with us. And then we're going to have in the upcoming shows Dr. Pillai talking about the science of visualizations to overcome fears, Dr. Vitin to talk about mindful motherhood, and then emotional and spiritual education for kids and youth with Lane Mitchell by Onion Head Company with Naur Fonseca and Gabi Ferreira from Massachusetts as well, and many more. Just go to our website, kardecradio.com/upcoming talk shows, and you're going to enjoy and rejoice to know that until the end of the year and next year and the upcoming years, we have amazing people to help us breed Spiritism into our lives. So to wrap up this awareness on the need to boost our mental health, here is the prayer that Kardec teaches us in the Gospel according to Spiritism. Prayer for the sick. We're talking about mental illness. Prayer for the sick. There are several prayers. Prayers to be said by the sick person. Chapter 28 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Prayer to be said for the sick person and by the healing medium. So let us pray right now in a moment of charity for all the people in both realms of life that are experiencing the tragedy or the difficulties of mental illness. Let us pray now according to Kardec's words. O God, your designs are impenetrable. In your wisdom, you have deemed it right to afflict all of the people who are mentally ill with sickness. We pray that you will cast your compassionate gaze upon his or her suffering and deign to put an end to it. Good spirits, ministers of the Almighty God, we ask you to second our desire to bring relief to all of them. Direct our thoughts so that it may pour out a healthy balm over their bodies and console their souls. Inspire them with patience and submission to God's will. Give them the strength to endure their pain with Christian resignation, so they may not lose the fruit of their trial. Thank you, dear listener. We'll be back next week. Thank you so much. God bless us all.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.